Weather Group. I am Scotty Powell here, and we are happy that you're joining us tonight. I know it's kind of active here in the Western Carolinas and the upstate of South Carolina with a pretty impressive storm system moving through, generating a lot of heavy rain and some isolated thunderstorms, and we've actually had a few tornadoes reported in northern Georgia near the Atlanta area. So we're going to be monitoring that this evening, and it's kind of tied in with our topic tonight. As you've been hearing for the past couple of weeks, we have the representatives of CASA on with us tonight. It's a very unique and pretty neat idea with radar coverage in areas that don't have the best coverage. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. A few housekeeping rules before we get into the program, though. This is a live broadcast. If you are watching tonight and you want to ask a question or make a comment, you may do it several ways. There's a question and answer tab that you're able to submit those through, or just send us a Facebook message or a Twitter message, and we'll be able to share those tonight as well. And if you're watching on the rebroadcast and you want to get any information at the end of the show, we'll share social media outlets and email addresses that you can direct those questions to our guests tonight. Also, make sure that you have downloaded our previous podcasts. They are all up and ready to go. All you got to do is go to your favorite podcast store and download those, and you can enjoy. So with that, and with weather coming in, we'll kind of skip the introductions. It has been a fairly quiet weather week in the Carolinas up until tonight, so we'll kind of skip those. And just to give you a little heads up, Ricky Matthews is on his way. He's actually out doing a live shot for the television station in Bristol, so he will be joining us a little bit later, as you'll see him join in, I'm sure, here in the next little bit. Anything I failed to cover, guys, or are we good to go? All right.
Hoping for no spin-ups.
All right, yeah, we're good to go. So, go ahead, Joey.
Hey, I just want to make sure, because my screen is still saying off air. Are you guys showing on air?
Yep, it says live on mine.
I see live.
Oh, cool.
You're just behind.
I'm taking a screenshot of that so you can see it, but it still says off air. Just want to make sure. All right, roll on.
We're good. We're good to go. All right, so let's introduce, without further delay, I'm going to introduce our guests, and then we'll kind of go into the topic tonight. Ms. Brenda Phillips joins us. She is the director of the CASA Radars. Chandra is a professor out at Colorado State. He's done a lot of engineering and work with the CASA representatives. We also have Joe Frizzle on. He is the mayor pro tem in Midlothian, Texas. I think I pronounced that correct. If not, you can correct me in just a minute. And we also will have Francesca, is that it? I was writing it down. They are a radar engineer. He'll join us as well later on. We also have our good buddy, Mr. Brad Panovich, on from NBC Charlotte. We all know Brad, and Brad's going to share kind of a story that needs to be shared with us. A recent tornado a few years ago that CASA, if we had had CASA, it may have helped out the situation just a little bit better. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Ms. Brenda. And Brenda, kind of talk to us about CASA, what it's all about, and how you guys have got started, and some of the stories behind the CASA setup.
Okay, great. Thanks. Very happy to be here. Let's see, why don't I start from the beginning, which is about 12 years ago, when a group of academic institutions, University of Massachusetts Amherst, where I'm from, Colorado State University, University of Oklahoma, University of Puerto Rico, received a big NSF grant, an Engineering Research Center grant, and they want you to look at tough problems that can be solved by engineered systems. So we chose to look at the problem of radar gaps and how you could address those through deploying smart networks of X-band radars that could basically fill in the gaps between next-rad radars. Now, should I assume that you guys know about that? Should I go into a little bit more about what the radar gap issue is? What do you think?
We've talked a little bit about it, but on our shows in previous times. But if you want to refresh, I know we have a lot of followers tonight, so they may have not caught the previous shows. If you want to refresh, be more than happy to.
Okay, so with the current NextRad system, which is the system that's deployed by the NWS, the radars are anywhere from 150, actually 200 to 250 kilometers apart. And what happens with radar beams is they look straight out, but the Earth curves away from the radar beam. So as you get farther and farther from the radar, you get this observation gap. And that's what you guys are facing in North Carolina, and particularly in the city of Charlotte, where you're in between a lot of X-rad radar, so you're not seeing very low. And the issue with that is that a lot of weather, and a lot of severe weather especially, happens in the lowest parts of the atmosphere, so you're not directly looking at it. And so what we did with the CASA network is we started to create networks of X-band radars, and these are smart networks, so the radars work collaboratively. They have short range, and so they can look way down into the lower parts of the atmosphere. And you see our CASA engineer, Francesc Binion, has just joined us. Francesc, are you there?
I think I am.
Okay, great. So we deployed these radars initially in Oklahoma, in central Oklahoma. And one of the things that we do, and one of the things that characterized our research, is that we always did our work in test beds, and we always did them along with users. So when we deployed this network of 4 radars in Oklahoma, as weather came through the network, we disseminated the data to National Weather Service forecasters and emergency managers, and they would provide us feedback on how the system worked. And then we'd keep making adjustments to the system. So basically in Oklahoma, we had the opportunity to validate the system, and we had a couple of really good instances of decision making. One particular one was a tornado outbreak back in May 24th of 2012. It was the same year that Joplin happened. Is that 2012 or 2010? I can't remember. But in any case, it happened just on the tail of Joplin. And there was a whole outbreak, several EF4 and EF3 tornadoes, and we had one of the emergency managers actually looking at our data as a tornado was forming and coming towards him, and he was actually able to see the tornado make a turn and make some life-saving decisions based on that. So, so that was one of our, kind of our best cases of somebody actually using the data in real time to save lives. So. So really the next part of the story is when we really wanted to continue to develop the network, we wanted to understand how it could benefit urban areas. And so with that, we actually started a collaboration in North Texas, in North Central Texas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've been collaborating with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, which is a regional organization, a regional development organization, and so we basically moved the network down there. And we've been operating that network since about probably late 2012. And we're up to a 6-node network now. And again, we're operating during real-time events. The data is going out to the public safety community. It's also going into the National Weather Service to evaluate. And we are continuing to develop the technology, as we're working on the project. Why don't I stop there and just see if anybody, one on the CASA side, has anything to add, or if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, definitely. So, Joe or Francesc, if you have anything else to add.
I think Brenda's covered it pretty well up to this point.
Alrighty, I'll jump in here, Kit, then. I was Ricky Matthews, by the way, for everyone who I haven't introduced myself to. I was out on a live shot and just got back in. So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned one of your technical representatives come on. Can we talk a little bit about the technical aspects of CASA radars and how they vary from both the terminal Doppler that we have in Charlotte and the 88Ds?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let either Francesc or Chandra take that question.
Let me, this is Chandra. I don't know if you can hear me. If you hear me, it's good.
We can hear you.
So the current radars, which is the Weather Service radars, are S-band, which is approximately 3 gigahertz, and the wavelength is 10 centimeters. As a result, if you have ever visited an X-rad radar, it's about a huge dish which has got a diameter of about 9 meters or so. So, and it's a massive infrastructure, and it's a very traditional way of thinking in terms of technology handed down from military operations, and these big S-band radars. And terminal Doppler weather radars are C-band radars, and those radars are more common in Europe. And these radars measure two things today. They measure the reflectivity or the amount of rain, and then they also measure the Doppler, which is the winds. Winds are fundamentally vectors. They have a magnitude and direction. So these radars will measure the winds only in the radial direction pointing to the radar. So that's one major difference. So now let's come down to CASA radars. CASA radars are X-band radars, which are even much smaller in size, and they are close to 10 gigahertz or 3 centimeter wavelengths. And then if you start looking at antenna size, okay, let's keep going down. We all have seen I don't know how many of the old days, there used to be satellite dishes in backyards of houses. They were huge. And then nowadays, if you look at this Dish Network, DirecTV, and all the satellite networks, the dishes are really small because they're starting to go to K-band frequencies. So that's the main difference as the first thing. And second thing is, the NextRad radars are weather service radars we would call fundamentally a data push system. That is, a radar in Seattle and a radar in Charlotte, they pretty much work the same in terms of scan strategies. Whereas CASA radars are data pull systems. That is, you can make these radars scan according to the prevailing environment, and you can build adaptive scans. So technically, and then the third thing is both radars, both NextRad and CASA radars are what are called dual pole radars, which is dual polarization. They measure precipitation at both horizontal and vertical polarization. That's pretty much the technical. I don't know if I got too technical here. So
we've got both types of viewers: the really technical ones and the ones that are a little non-meteorological. But you covered it pretty well. In terms of, you mentioned the different types of data pulling in, though. What you're talking about with the CASA radars is you can pretty much tell it what you want it to pull in terms of scanning strategy, so almost like it's scanning at a certain angle only?
No, what we're doing is an adaptive scanning strategy where each minute the radars will do a scan, and then the data is centralized, and we're doing data mining. And then based on what we find in that, then we're sending commands back out to the radars in terms of what they should look at. I actually have an image of the scans, and so as a result, we do sector scans. So we don't necessarily go around 360 degrees at a time. We'll do kind of pie slice scans that will focus on the areas of most interest, and sometimes we'll direct two radars there. Like, for instance, if we want to get multi-Doppler scans, and so that happens on an automated basis, and it's that whole optimization process happens every minute.
And I missed the first little part of your intro, but while we're covering everything in terms of like the technical and the basic stuff, let's talk about cost for a moment too, because that's always the one thing that seems to set us back in terms of always getting these radars. Can we talk about the average cost? Obviously, the 88D is a very expensive radar. Compared to the CASA radars, what's the cost differential there?
You guys want me to handle that, or you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you can start, Brenda.
Okay. So the hardware itself is in the $400,000 to $500,000 range for each radar, and these radars are networked, so we recommend that people start out with 3 radars. Now, obviously, if you're trying to look at the same coverage as you get with NextRed, you'll need quite a few of them. But the nice thing about CASA is you can build your network. So you can start with 3, and then as you get more and more money, you can continue to build it to, to fill in the gap. So you could start in your most populated areas, for example, or your areas where you feel like, you're missing the most information on weather, and then continue to build it out.
So for a city,
let me add something to that, if I may.
sure.
So with any radar, there are 2 types of costs. One is the cost of the radar, and second thing is the deployment cost. So for example, you can have a budget to buy a yacht, but then you need to have a boating dock to have that, and so on and so forth. So the social and economic footprint of S-band radar, which is the WSI, I have a S-band radar at Colorado State University, so I know what it takes. So it's a huge radar, and its social footprint is very high, and it needs huge infrastructure. Whereas the CASA radars, because they are small, they could ride existing infrastructure. That is, they could just ride on rooftops, and they can be put on small towers. And so you got to look at the whole story in terms of cost. There's like a factor of 10 difference, or we call it 10 dB difference in cost between CASA radars and weather service radars, the NextRad radars.
So when we talk about a coverage area, how many CASA radars would be needed to cover just the city of Charlotte?
I don't know if I can respond to that off the cuff, but then others can join in and respond.
Sure.
So,
Francesca has a little image of that. You want to show that, Francesca?
yeah, this may be a good time, and Brenda, maybe you can put that up. In the meantime, let me talk at it while you guys are preparing the image, let me talk at it at a philosophical level. So, I don't know if you have heard of dual polarization radars, because that's something that I worked on it in my lifetime. I mean, throughout my life before I came to CASA. And so it's not an apples-to-apple comparison to start with. Weather service, the current NextRad radars just measure reflectivity and velocity, and it's a radial velocity. Whereas CASA radars will really measure the full vector velocity and then give you feedback. Second thing is the CASA radars scans can be updated every 30 seconds to a minute. And so like this, there are lots of different features. So you have a very advanced radar, but then you don't want to use it just for getting a radial coverage of looking at just reflectivity. So that's the first response I want to give when you want to just compare in terms of coverage. With that, so today the radars are being built for 40 to 50 kilometers range, and the philosophy is if you want to cover a lot of distances further than that, there is law of physics limitations, which is Earth's curvature. We should be really putting a different radar at a farther location instead of making a much more powerful radar that can look farther. So with that said, does somebody else want to jump in and say different things and add to what I've just said?
I'm trying to share.
Yeah, your picture is showing.
Oh.
If Kit can present that, there we go.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've got it presented to everyone.
Okay. So just to try to illustrate a little bit this question, Chandra, I think you should mute. I prepared a little bit of a sketch showing what I took to be the Charlotte area of interest, which is really Mecklenburg County, I think, that I outlined here.
Correct.
And yes, forgive me if I butcher names, and this is this is all pretty new to me. So you see the red contour here in the middle of the image, and then I kind of threw a few of the NextRad that are closer to you, and none is really close. But KGSP would be your best bet, right? With a range coverage of 160 kilometers. So by the time your county is under that radar, you're pretty far away from where the next rat sits, and you've got quite a bit of beam dispersion, and it's pretty high up there, and you know all of that. So to cover this area with a CASA style solution, as Brenda was saying, we would propose 3 radars with a 40-kilometer coverage radius, and this is really an exciting place to put the radars, because it's the dimensions and the shape are such that everything falls inside what would be the multiple Doppler coverage of that network cell. So the area is contained in a way, and it's positioned in a way where you can cover it really, really optimally with 3 radars, and the triangle doesn't need to sit like this. It could be oriented, however the actual deployment may allow. But yeah, something like this, just three radars would give pretty much what is optimal network coverage, which is sometimes hard to achieve when you've got areas that are shaped somewhat differently. And in those 40 kilometers per radar, right? So it's 80 kilometers across each one of those radars. In the lowest tilt, essentially your beam would be tied to the ground, right? You'd be 100 meters from the ground on your bottom of the lowest tilt at 40 kilometers, with the top being at about 1 kilometer, with a radar that would have at X-band just about 1.4 degree of beam width. And as Chandra was saying, these are fairly small radars, and essentially deploying them is not a civil engineering project as it is deploying an S-band radar. So we think that with 3 radars we would do a very, very good job from the start here, given the area and the density.
Yeah, just looking from a Charlotte person perspective, that covers a large majority of our high population regions. And I want to bring Brad Panovich in here because he's one of our broadcasters at NBC Charlotte. And Brad, talk a little bit about how the clustering of this could help with certain scenes we've seen in the past, certain storm events, stuff like that.
I'm actually just drooling looking at this picture about how nice this would be for the Charlotte metro area, because that metro area you're looking at, covered by those 3 CASA radars, would cover about 1.5 million people, which is our metro area. Because obviously the center of Charlotte is the center, but this covers all the suburban areas, and especially those areas north and east of Charlotte in Cabarrus County, up there towards Concord, and up towards Lake Norman and Rowan County. That's a really big void, and that would pick up a large chunk of our population right there. Yeah, that that would be huge for this market if we had those 3 radars there.
When Brad Panovich runs for mayor in several years, we're going to work on a CASA radar to get applied. But Brad, with the current positioning we have with the terminal Doppler kind of to the northwest of the city, we end up with that kind of radar gap there for a little bit where that water tower and the transmission towers are. We kind of eliminate any type of radar gap with something like this.
Yeah, the terminal Doppler is kind of a band-aid approach right now, and obviously the FAA never fully expected that the Weather Service would use them the way they're being used now. They were primarily put in for the airport for wind shear, and now they're kind of being stretched to their limits. And now obviously a C-band radar like that has huge attenuation issues, and obviously the beam blockage in the Northwest Radio, thanks to a communication tower, isn't helpful at all. But something like this could benefit a lot of people, and Charlotte's the second biggest financial center in the United States. It's the second biggest hub for American Airlines. It's the head to Duke Power. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure here that could be protected with these radars, which I frankly believe right now aren't to the best of their abilities. Yes, I know we have some coverage, but it's not the best, and something like this would be, for the cost that you look at for some of the other test beds, this actually isn't that out of the realm of possibility that something like this could be done in our area.
The other thing that we've done in Dallas Fort Worth is that we put together a consortium of to actually, pay for the operational costs of the radars. We actually brought the radars to Dallas, and they didn't have to pay for the hardware because our big grant, our NSF Engineering Center grant, paid for that. But the same kind of consortium could be formed in your area, especially if you have people like Duke Energy and big companies. Everybody contributes a little. It's not an overwhelming, cost that you're talking about, and you can get going
How do
very
I stop
quick.
sharing my screen, or should I stop sharing my screen? Or is there anything I should do here?
There should be a little button that says "Stop sharing" somewhere,
Somewhere.
top or bottom.
I think you should keep sharing the screen because that one picture is worth a million words here.
All right.
I could not agree more. That is, that tells you everything you need to see right there.
Actually, you guys are seeing this way. I'm seeing it in a different way. That is, I've been in the radar business for a long time, weather radar, and I cannot believe a big metro like Charlotte ended up in a hole like this.
We can't believe it either. We live here.
And,
yeah, it's shocking.
I would like to let Brad talk about a situation that occurred a couple of years ago where this radar system would have been very vital in what we saw, Brad. Kind of a little scenario like we had tonight with the system moving in. Talk to us about that March night of 2012, I believe.
Yep.
And talk about what you saw and how maybe CASA could have benefited everyone.
Yeah, I remember that Friday night very well. I stayed here late on a Friday night knowing that we would have the possibility. We had a QLCS type event, similar to what we have tonight coming up from Georgia. We were wedged in, and we had the cold air damming boundaries sitting draped right across the Charlotte metro area, and we had one of these Boeing segments come up from the southwest and interact with that boundary and create a quick spin-up that ended up being an EF2 tornado on the northeast side of Charlotte. So for everyone looking at the map, that's kind of between Charlotte and Concord, almost directly halfway between. A couple things happened there. It was in a very poor radar coverage area, obviously, because that's about the worst spot in our metro for radar coverage because it's far enough away from GSP and not close enough to the Raleigh radar to be much good. And it's also on the border of two weather service offices. So there was the GSP office covers Charlotte, and then in Cabarrus County, and one county over is the Raleigh office. So you had some coordination issues, and it was 2:30 in the morning on top of that. So I think there was a lot of human issues going on, human error issues going on with this as well. But clearly the radar, if you're looking at NEXRAD data alone, you could not see this spin up. Looking back at the terminal Doppler radar, for 2 scans, it did pick up a very nice couplet and picked up the boundaries quite well. But I feel like between the two offices having to go between their NEXRAD data and not actually probably looking over at the terminal data as much as they normally would, and being a unique situation, I think the radar coverage actually cost us a vital warning for those people that lived in that area. And the scary part was that there was 2 children in a house. Luckily, nobody died, and there was no major injuries, but 2 children were actually blown out of their bed onto the interstate at 2:30 in the morning. And the family, we interviewed them, I remember saying they knew there could be some rough weather, and they were in their safe location early in the evening, but it got late, and they decided they wanted to go to bed. So the children went up to their room, and the grandmother stayed and slept on the couch, and she ended up having stuff fall on her, but the children, because they were on the second floor of the house, and the roof got blown off, and the second floor got pushed out of the interstate, they ended up being pushed out there. So that was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people in our area for why wasn't there a warning, and it kind of brought to the forefront the whole, why is Charlotte such a big city? I think it's the 16th biggest metro in the country, and it doesn't have adequate radar coverage. And I know, you know how government works and how this works. You can't put a radar everywhere, but for the population density that we have, it seems like you should try to put them in the locations that will cover at least the most people and the most infrastructure. And hopefully we won't have another event like that, but I'm afraid those are the type of events sometimes you need to kind of spur some change.
Yeah, and I can share a couple images from the Dallas-Fort Worth testbed that I think would speak to this. So I'm going to try to screen share some more somehow.
While he's picking those up, there is a current bill that's in Congress right now that's been introduced at least, and Kit's actually been keeping up with this fairly often. So Kit, kind of talk to us briefly about what the bill is while we're picking up this screen share and maybe the progress that it's making.
Well, there hasn't been much to keep up with. It was introduced to the House of Representatives mid-November, November 17th, so almost 2 months ago. And what it basically says, like it's titled the, let's see here, where is the title? The Metropolitan Weather Hazards Protection Act of 2015. And basically what it says, there's a few other technical stuff, but it says to maintain and operate at least one Doppler weather radar site within 55 miles of each city in the United States, which has a population of more than 700,000 individuals. So, as Brad said, the Charlotte area has over 1.5 million people, and it is definitely outside of that 55-mile radius. So, Charlotte is one region where they were really pushing it. But I believe Cincinnati, Ohio, was another area where they fit the bill of 700,000 people being.
I think it was
without
Columbus,
that
Ohio.
Columbus, okay.
Yeah.
So I've actually got a PowerPoint slide from one of my classes from Dr. Easton. I've shared some of his stuff before. But you can see the Charlotte area just north of it. There's a wide swath where there's no radar coverage below 6,000 and even under 10,000 feet. And out west, there's a lot of low radar coverage, but there's not a lot of population, and there's a lot of military bases. So they do have some radar coverage. This is all just the NEXRAD 88D radar coverage there.
Even still, that's a surprising image for parts of Missouri and parts of the Great Plains states that have beam coverage only at 10,000 feet, even for their sparse populations. But
right.
Francesca, you want to come in here with those images?
Yeah, so if you're all looking at those, I think this is very much the same case that was discussed before, where you've got two boundaries that can collide and create this larger squall line, where you have this spin up on the leading edge, and that was in the town and the radar that Joe is very familiar with here. You can see on the zoomed in image, a very clear hook echo kind of developing here. There's a notch on top, and that's where the rotation picks up. You can see it also on the Doppler velocity. And this actually was coming towards the town of Midlothian at a hefty 32 to 33 meters per second. So the fact that we were scanning at this, we were scanning this storm with 1 minute updates, really showcase how quickly these spin-ups are created. And this particular one sort of sustained and faded for close to 10 or 12 minutes. I've got a GIF that somehow is not sharing, but it would be the movie of what's going on here. So you can see the kind of resolution that we can observe these things with, and this is only for one of the radars in the network. This was in an area where we didn't have overlap, but you can imagine that if this was going through the Charlotte area right now, the way we sort of dream the 3 radar configuration, you would have 1, 2, and 3 radars looking at that storm. So no chance that this would sneak up on you in any particular way.
What size is the beam width? I'm curious.
For this particular radar, the beam width is 1.4 degrees. So it's a 6-foot antenna. It's
Gotcha.
It's a fairly small thing on top of a tower.
Brenda, I think you started saying something here.
Yeah. I just wanted Francisco to move the image up a little because I don't think people, or at least I couldn't see the zoomed-in view of the tornado image.
Yeah.
Did you guys see it?
If we can somehow maybe make the window smaller or something, I'm not sure if you're sharing the image or if you're sharing your screen. Sometimes that will make a difference between which one.
Is that me?
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, scroll down or.
We can work on it. Let me ask another question in the meantime. When we talk about having 3 separate radar sources, would the user have to bounce between all 3 radars, or is there some type of system or algorithm that would pick the lowest scan of each radar and put it into a software?
So we have network.
Brenda, you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So we have both network.
All right. Well, the answer is the user doesn't have to do anything. The user has doesn't have to. It can do things though. You've got the choice of selecting the individual radars or the network composite product. So, so we have this web page, right, that we use to disseminate data, where you'll find all the individual data from each one of the radars, and then you'll see the network product, right, where we have an algorithm that will composite all of the appropriate scans at the appropriate time and elevations, and create this composite image that we then overlay dual Doppler on top. And I think that Brenda had some examples of that. So the answer is the user has choices, but it doesn't have obligations. And I think Brenda is ready to share something here.
Yeah, I could. I have a network code. Let me see if I can do this right.
Or maybe not.
She's getting it together, I think.
Yeah.
While Brenda is getting that together, I will fill in the dead time here. Chandra, can you guys hear me?
Gotcha, we gotcha.
So, Brenda, just give a sign and I'll stop talking. Essentially, they're trying to change the paradigm. We should be seeing where the storm is, and it should not be about the radar. So these 3 radars will appropriately pick and choose what is the right resolution and how they have to be put together, and then the best picture will be put out. That's the philosophy in terms of observing this. So that's the intelligent system, and I think she's got a picture. I will let Brenda talk.
Okay, so this is an example of a networked product. This is an example of our network's QPE product. So it's a rain rate product. So it's the instantaneous rain rate. And you can see this is the overlapping radars in our Dallas network. This was during May, so you can see there are just hundreds of flash flood warnings going on in the network. And this is a product where we use both the CASA radars, and then we also use, we sometimes use actually the network radars for some of the single radar coverage areas. And so the scale here is these darker colors are like getting the equivalent of, like 6 to 7 inches of rain an hour. And so this is just a system that was going through. And so you can look at this and really see where the intense parts of the storm are happening and how they're evolving. I'll just play this movie. This is updating every minute, and so you get this view. You guys seeing the movie?
Yeah, it started playing.
So I mean, so you can just kind of see this, pushing through the network. And so this is an example of a networked view and what we can do. And one of the things with X-band radars, it's good to have multiple coverage, so you can pick the best radar that has the best view.
So on the topic of, like, I know you said X-band versus S-band, what would the difference be in, other than like the range, is there any different features that will be picked up on an X-band rather than the 88Ds?
I'm going to give that one to Chandra. That one's for him.
Okay. So both radars are radars, and then the fundamental radar principle is the same. It's only when you go to dual polarization, when you pick up rainfall, though both S bands do dual polarization rainfall and X bands do dual polarization rainfall, yes, the X band dual polarization rainfall is a lot more accurate. That's because it gets the propagation difference between the two polarizations. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is X-band suffers attenuation as the electromagnetic beam propagates through rain, but that's compensated for by reconstructing it with the differential propagation phase, which is actually done at C-band and S-band too. So, and then the third thing is, this is not as important, but this is because the viewer asked this question. There is fundamentally wavelength raised to the 4 sensitivity by law of physics, and so we use that to our advantage. But all radars are pretty powerful to the point. I'm not going to make a big point about that. I don't know if I answered the right question that was asked. If I didn't answer that, please ask me again.
So, like, are there any specific features that come with an S-band or an X-band that you cannot see with an S-band? Like, I know you can see a hail core, for instance, with S-band, but is there anything smaller scale or even larger scale?
Oh, we can see hail cores with X-band. We have hydrometeor classification products. And, okay, let me rewind a little bit. What was this big CASA project all about? The CASA project was all about developing the whole slew of technologies that will work at X-band, what was working at S-band before, and more. So that's what we developed. So if you had asked me this 15 years ago, I would say, well, I don't know, we have to figure this out. But now after the project, most of these problems have been solved.
And I will add something that maybe it's tangential here, but X-band, for example, will be good at picking up things like smoke plumes from fires, because you've got a little bit higher scattering efficiency at the higher frequency. Anything that's suspended on a smoke plume, for example, you'll be able to see at X-band perhaps a little better than you would at a lower frequency. So, things like that when you're looking at smaller and smaller scatters, the actual thing in the air that you reflect the signal from, you'll have a bit of a better time at X-band just because of the higher frequency and scattering efficiency advantage.
So many different applications. Joe, we want to bring you in here to talk a little bit about your city, which is hosting one of these CASA radars. Talk a little bit about how you guys got it set up, kind of the process you went through, and the advantages you've seen from it.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay. A little demographic information about Midlothian. We're a town of about 23,000 people. We're located 30 miles southwest of Dallas and 30 miles southeast of Fort Worth. So we're right here kind of, south of the southern part of the Metroplex. I'm part of the North Central Texas Council of Government. That's how I got involved in it. And we had a radar unit installed at University of Texas at Arlington, and we talked to some local folks here about installing one here. I'm on city council. I'm mayor pro tem, so I had the ear of the city manager and the city engineer and the public works director and all that pretty readily, and we started discussing how could we get one here, and the installation cost was starting to get a little high for us because, like I said, it was not budgeted, it was nothing. So in a conversation I was having one day with the manager of a local steel mill here, I said, well, we need to get this radar, but I need a tower. He said, how big a tower do you need? Well, I said, I don't know, how big a tower can you build? He said, well, we can build you one 50 feet tall. I said, that ought to work. So the tower was donated, with that, we then started looking at other ways that we could get this done in a very economically feasible way, and we approached various and sundry. The geotech engineering was donated. All of the concrete was donated. Of course, all the rebar for the foundation and materials were all donated. The contractor that built the foundation was donated. Actually, we as a city only have out-of-pocket expense. Those contractors and those places that couldn't actually donate everything gave us the product and the services at their cost. So we ended up with about half of the install cost was donated or free to us. So we only had to pay about half of it. The tower itself, 50 feet tall, and I'm on my cell phone now. I was on the computer a while ago, and I was going to show you a picture of it. As Dr. Chandra explained it one day, it's the mother of all towers. But we went operational. It'll be 2 years ago this next month on the 17th of December, 2 years ago, and the radar has performed basically flawlessly. We've had some maintenance updates done to it, and it does well. The other night, like yesterday morning, as we commented earlier, the weather you guys are experiencing now in the Carolinas, we had through here about 3:30, 4 o'clock yesterday morning. And I sat here at the computer looking at the Midlothian site, not at the network, but just at our own site here. And I saw two little spin-ups just west of town. Were they brief? Yeah. And had I been waiting for the 88D or the Doppler update, I'd have never seen them because it only updates every 5 or 6 minutes, whereas CASA updates once a minute. And I could see the two little spin-ups. Me personally, I'm a network coordinator for our Skywarn group here, so I had guys in the field that were also, validating some of this. But had I not had CASA, I'd have never seen those little spin-ups. Now they never did touchdown. They were just never didn't really materialize into a funnel. But you could see with the wind product, you could see the spin, and I wouldn't want to be without it.
It certainly seems like
your question.
Oh yeah, you answered it perfectly. It certainly seems like something that's been invaluable.
We were the second node on the network. UTA was first. We were second. We were the first that went in with the public-private partnership. Subsequently, that one other unit west of us at a town of Cleburne, just about 30 miles west of us, have also implemented the same type of install with a public-private partnership. But that, to me, it was a win-win, a win for the community, and we just happen to be situated where we fit the network nomenclature, the network scheme really well, and we overlap well with the other units, so it has worked out as a win-win for us.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
You've heard this.
Sure.
One of the beauties of this whole process is the whole capital expenditure doesn't have to happen simultaneously. It can be built incrementally as money becomes available between different towns, different partners, and somebody has a different financial structure than others, and they may come up with money at a different time. So that's another very interesting part of this, and I should not be speaking to this. Brenda should be, because she is the economist in our group, and she will tell you volumes and volumes about how the barrier entries are completely demolished and removed here. Brenda, you want to add something to that story?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the things that we've been following is this notion of a community-based network, and can a community come together and put together the funds to be able to operate a network and not have to wait for a bill to go through Congress and not have to wait, for NOAA to do a requisition and things like that. So, and so we've been successful, and the great thing when, they're very involved in it. They want to look at the data. They're improving the safety. As a matter of fact, the meteorologist in charge at the Fort Worth NWS office just said it's unprecedented the amount of emergency managers talking about radar data now since the system's up, because everybody's looking at it and asking questions and learning. So, so I think what we're really trying to do are these flexible business models where you can have multiple people contribute to the cost. And also, if you think about the people who benefit from it, you can also, what the COG, with the North Central Texas Council of Governments do, is actually set up a membership fee where there are about 20 or 30 communities across North Texas who are paying annual fees to look at the data on a website. And that money is being used to operate the network. So you can do it on the capital investment side, but you can also do it on the operational cost side. And so I think it's like a flexible, interesting model, and we really are interested in taking it to other cities to see how it might work in other cities.
I want to give Brad an opportunity just to put in his final thoughts, because he's got to run quickly at 9 o'clock to do some TV stuff. But Brad, it sounds like you're going to be dreaming tonight about one of these things.
My wheels are turning already. I mean, this is just a phenomenal opportunity if we could get this going locally, because I think it solves a lot of issues for us. And as Brendan's been talking about, I think getting community involved would be a huge part of this, because getting community partners involved that have a big stake in having radars in this market would give them a reason to give back to the community. I mean, I always talk about, we were talking about the bill proposed in Congress for the radar data. I told a lot of people it'd be tough to get that to go through because there's too many hurdles. This is a little bit more doable, I think, and it's easy for people to get involved in something that they can have, some skin in the game, if you will. So I think this is it's a lot easier to do this locally than try to pawn this off on Washington, who just looks at Charlotte as some city way down south of them.
And guys, it's doable. It's doable at a local level. You just need to involve your local partners, and you can make it happen. A city the size of Charlotte, it should not be an issue to make it happen.
That's good to know, Joe. Thank you very much for the encouragement.
And Joey, I think you had something to add?
Yeah, these guys kind of answered everything, but I sort of wanted to maybe put a little bit of a bow on this, and especially before Brad jumps out of here, because he would obviously play a big part in helping get this thing kind of started in any community. I think about my small town where I grew up, and I think about how great it would be, and I'm going to definitely talk to some of our local officials there. But I guess kind of a two-part question. One is, Brenda could probably answer this one best. Down to the brass tacks, we're at step one. So what is step one for us to do now to get our local officials pushed towards this? And Joe might also have a lot of input on that also. But like I said, what is step one right now? What is our next move?
I think when I think about what we did in Dallas-Fort Worth, we needed to connect with a strong local group who could promote the project. And for us, in that case, that was the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And they did that through their Emergency Preparedness Department. And then they brought in the local weather service. And so that group started everything up. And they were able to bring things. So I think for each area, for Charlotte, it may be different. Maybe you need to bring together the media, Duke Energy, and some other players. But I think you need a strong local catalyst, and then we can get together. We can talk about kind of appropriate layouts, appropriate models for deploying the radars, all of those. But you kind of need a core of people locally who are going to drive this as it moves forward. So I'd say that would be the first step.
And Joe, my second part of this question is actually directly for you. You spoke of all the things that you got basically donated. I've got a background in sales, and I used to helped put on a number of events where we didn't spend any money to do it by getting donations. Kind of like you said, obviously you're on a much bigger scale than what some of the things I did. My question is, how did you approach these companies? What was your sale to get them to jump in and join in with this program?
Well, we're very fortunate here. We've got some major industries that are really civic minded, and they donate quite a bit to the city and provide quite a bit of resources to the city on a community-wide basis. And like I said, I was in a meeting with the manager of the steel place, and was commenting about the quality of this radar and how we really needed to get one installed here, but the install cost was going to be a little prohibitive for a town, a budget like ours. And he said, well, what do you need most? I said, a tower. He said, how big? And I went through that discussion with him. The rest of the contractors, a lot of them are contractors that we use on a local contract basis locally. They're local contractors. And of course, they've got a vested interest in the community as well. And quite candidly, our director of public works is a former Army Ranger, and he can become quite persuasive at times. So he and the city engineer were the ones that pretty well spearheaded a lot of the construction type stuff. And just an example, we were having a highway project going on in front of, this is located at our criminal justice center, the police department, and the courts area, and we're having a highway project going on out in front, and they had a large crane, and we were going to need a crane to lift the unit up on top of the tower. So he goes out and talks to the general foreman of the highway crew going out there, and he said, yeah, when you get ready, holler, we'll drive over and load it for you, and just that type of stuff from a local relationship basis that it happens.
Awesome. One final thing I was going to ask you on this. Like I said, I have every intention of speaking to some local officials about maybe getting the ball rolling on this. I'm sure you don't mind me passing on your number to any of our local mayors. They can call you and you can tell them exactly how great this is, right?
Absolutely not. I'll be happy to tell them anything they want to know, and if anyone wants the CAD drawings to this tower, I can send that to you. I've got all the CAD drawings. I've got the engineering and everything on the tower. I can send pictures, whatever anyone may need. Well, you have them call me, and I'll coordinate email addresses and all that, and we can do whatever you need.
Awesome. That's great. I think a great network is obviously the first start. Scotty, Ricky, obviously I have a final question I'd like to ask a couple of these guys, but we'll get that at the end, so you guys go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like from the notifications on my phone, from Facebook and Twitter, a lot of people are very interested in this, and I think Brad and Ricky have already got a target ideas of who to approach, so hopefully some way down the road we can get this going in the Carolinas. So Brad's got to head off to do some TV stuff, so we appreciate Brad coming on. You can follow him at WXBrad, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, got to run.
Hey, Brad, before you go,
yes.
The NBC affiliate here in the area has been active in this project ever since it started. Their chief meteorologist can fill you in with everything you need to know from that standpoint.
Thank you very much. I feel like this could be a huge thing for our area, and I've already got ideas spinning in my head. So thanks for all the input, and I think this is just the beginning. This has really kind of inspired me to kind of try to get this rolling here.
It's a game changer, guys. It really is, and I can speak from a user standpoint. I know Brendan, Chandra, and Francesca and all that can speak from the technical standpoint, but when you're charged with protecting a community with life safety and all that, it's a game changer.
And just to sort of lead into like what Brad was talking about, this market being definitely a great next step in the CASA network field. I would love to see it happen here too, just living here all my life. But, and this sort of is a comment and a question, like, they updated the radars. Like the first radar set was the WSR 57s. Then that was 1957. Then 1974 they had the next set, and then 1988 was the last real rollout of a new radar. What would y'all think about this becoming like the next step in updating the radar coverage, getting it closer, and getting more radar coverage throughout the entire United States, and like I said, just being the new radar to come into existence as opposed to just small networks?
Well, that is something that we're very interested in. I think, it's tempered right now by the current, our current Congress and their willingness to spend money on things like that. In some ways, this regional approach is like a grassroots approach, and then there are people who are thinking about national approaches, and at some point, hopefully the two will meet. But ultimately, I think you could really, change the way we're forecasting and looking at severe weather by having a national network. I just don't know if government, will take that on. But in the meantime, we're not waiting. We're going out and doing these regional networks, which would be very, very valuable. We'd love to see that.
Yeah, I definitely think that Weather Protection Act is sort of the first step in calling into their minds right now, like, hey, this is something that is for the public and it's needed right now, and maybe just having that bill in Congress already will sort of promote it to the next step of, hey, let's just go ahead and update the entire radar system.
Okay.
Well, one thing the advantage about CASA is, one is the 1 minute update, and two, you're seeing, and like I like to describe it, you're below the clouds. You're looking at ground level. And right now, my house, I'm about 30 miles from the NextRed site here in the south part of Fort Worth. And at my house, where I'm sitting right now, the lowest that thing can see here is about 1,200 feet. So, I don't live at 1,200 feet. So I want to know what's happening where I am. And you move off to the other side of the county, and you're looking at about 4,000 feet. Well, the farther away you get from that NextRed site, the higher in the elevation that it's looking. It's not seeing what's blowing my house away. It's seeing what's, it's a jet stream level.
And Joe, how far are you away from the CASA site, and what's the level it's looking at there?
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry. I said, how far are you away from the CASA site, and how many feet above the ground are you looking at from your house?
I'm about 6 miles. I'm about 6 miles from the actual CASA location here at my house. And I can send you a picture, a screenshot I've taken here in town, and I can show you the water tower at downtown. I can show you TV antennas at Cedar Hill north of us. I can show you the cement plants. I can show you everything as blips on that CASA radar at ground level.
That was one of our viewer questions, so I kind of got that in there. So
I just looked at the GSP radar sites over Charlotte. It is a level of 7,400 feet above the ground.
Yeah.
How many people live at 7,400 feet?
There's
And
a
I
couple
would
people in
say
Venice.
that, in Dallas, we are, in some cases, we're actually not, we're fairly close to the NextRed radar. And actually, we're still seeing tremendous benefits in the high resolution data and the fast updates, because we have it's 60-meter gate spacing, so it's very high resolution data that you're seeing.
Last May, I believe it was, Brenda, when last May we had the little F0 come through here, and I've got screenshots that I can show you the almost, if you go to a Google view look, I can almost show you the houses that it was under or over.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That was actually the image that Seth showed. It didn't. Maybe we can post that on the site or something, since it didn't translate too well on that chat.
You talking about our little F0 here, Brenda?
Yeah. That was the image that he showed with his screen, but you couldn't see kind of the juicy part of it. So maybe
You
we can
can
put
you
that
can
on the
you
site.
can zoom down on the high resolution. You can zoom down to street level, and I can tell you it's between street A and B and 1 and 3. You know.
When we wrap up here, we'll hang on to you guys for a moment once we finish the show here, and we'll get some contact information because we'd love to have those images and stuff, and so we could post them on our Facebook page and folks can look at them there. We're past 9 o'clock. Scotty's got to run. We had one last viewer question I want to get in. That was from Shay Gibson, one of our regular watchers. He was wondering in terms of outflow boundaries, and Joe has mentioned, how low the radar seems to scan almost at ground level. So I'm assuming that it's going to be a very good radar at picking up things like outflow boundaries, right?
Yeah, we do see some outflow boundaries. Actually, if you go to, we have a Facebook site, CASA Radar. There's an image of one on that you can see.
Okay, very good. Alrighty, Scotty, I will give it to you to kind of close us out.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on. I don't know if you've looked at radar, but if you want to hurry up and develop a CASA site here in Western North Carolina, we could use that right now. We're watching that line move in, but thank you so much. You don't know how much information this has generated. My phone has went off nonstop since we've had this show with Twitter feeds and Facebook posts and all the groups and stuff. So hopefully, Brad Panovich is a very good guy in Charlotte and knows a lot of people. So. Maybe with the help of all of us, we can get the ball started in that area. Maybe we can have CASA come to Charlotte and see how it works out. But we're very appreciative of your time and love the information that you shared. And anytime you want to come back on the show, any of you guys, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you. We enjoyed it.
All right, guys. And tell us again, Twitter, Facebook, how we can follow CASA, and so our followers can follow you guys.
So we're on Facebook. It's CASA Radar, and also Twitter at CASA Radar.
Awesome.
There's a website which is casa.umass.edu. Yeah. Oh, and there's also a site on the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Maybe I should send you those, or is that the best way to do it?
Send them to her, Brenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. You can send them in the email, and we'll disperse it out. And Joe, we'd love to have you back on maybe sometime and kind of talk about the different events that you guys have used with the CASA, kind of from the community perspective. Very interested how your community has come together to help get this process going. So maybe we can have you and Brenda back on sometime early next year and talk about that. So again, thank you guys so much for all coming on. We appreciate it, and a lot of good information that was shared tonight.
Yeah, Scotty. I was going to say I'd love to have Brenda and Joe to come on. Us actually bring on a couple of local, political leaders, local officials, and really sit down and have a good discussion about this, and go over some of the difficulties and the limitations and the barricades that we got to get through to make this happen. So yeah, if they're willing to do that, we definitely need to set that up.
Yeah, anything we can do here to help you, we'll be more than happy to.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I think that's a great idea. It'd be great to get.
We have a lot of connections in Charlotte with Brad, and then even in the Greensboro area, another area that's kind of in between radar coverage. We have some great connections up that way as well. So hopefully we can get that scheduled maybe in the next few months and go that way. Next week we're kind of iffy if we have a show. We're waiting on a guest. I don't know, should I mention who it may be or just kind of keep it a secret?
Let it be a surprise.
Yeah.
All right. So we're working on a guest, so follow our Facebook this week, our Twitter page, and if we can't get our guest next week, we're going to take off for the Thanksgiving holiday. But if we can, we'll have a special show next Wednesday, and if we can't do it next Wednesday with our guest, we'll get that guest scheduled in the next foreseeable future. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Make sure that you're watching, and hopefully we have some exciting news with our guests for next week. If not, everyone have a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you December the 2nd as we talk about the South Carolina flooding episode. And Brenda, I think you guys, I'm not sure how much we hinted on the flood that you guys can do with the radars. Maybe we can have you come back and talk about that as well. because not only is it tornadoes, but flooding as well for the radars. So we would love to have you guys back on once again. Have a great week. We'll see you in a few weeks, and stay dry out there tonight. It's going to get wet.
Okay, great.
Enjoy the rain.